Good morning. I'm currently speaking to you from my home office in Southern California, where we have been sheltering in place for a while, and I'm sure that wherever you're watching this from, you also have been experiencing some of the challenges and strangeness of our current moment. Um, so I'm delighted that I'm going to get the chance to read to you from my very strange debut novel. The hardcover version of it looks like this. The Amateurs, and I'm going to read from the paperback version. It has like a deer drinking out of a swimming pool, but they're both the same inside. I just want to say quickly thank you to Armin Svajian for inviting me to read for you, and also just a shout out to the Oakville Public Library, which is a library that I actually have been to quite a few times, as I used to just constantly frequent libraries in Southern Ontario. Used to work at the Hamilton Public Library, and I love your system. So here we go. I'm going to read to you from the very opening pages of The Amateurs, starting with the first chapter. And before I do that, I'm just going to read a quick epigraph, one of the quotes from the beginning, from Frederick Turner's Cultivating the American Garden. Nature is pathetically willing. The flowers growing in the desolation of Mount St. Helens testify to what in human beings we would call a lunatic hopefulness, the optimism of the amateur. Chapter 1. The Collectors. Looting was absolutely not frowned upon. One of the happier aspects of this new era was that everything was up for grabs. You would never again go without a pen. You would never come to the end of plastic sandwich containers. In a reversal worthy of a god with more humor than vengeance, the people who remained were outnumbered by every other thing. There had been a time, parents told wide-eyed children, when humans were a cancerous growth upon the land. 10 years from this moment, if you wanted to shock a 13-year-old, you would tell her that people had once been so populous, so resourceful, so filled with greed, that they had begun to eliminate the other species. How was such a thing possible? The child would say, thinking of the raccoons and cats that moved in sea waves too numerous to count. The trick had been, it seemed, not proliferation, but longevity. People didn't reproduce like rabbits, not like spiders with their hundreds of eggs, but despite incredible odds, they'd managed millennia of dominance. And then it had all changed. The odds were against them, yet here they were, down to 42, not including pets. Here they were, gathering in an Anglican church in the city's core. Marie refused to live with the others in the huge brick houses near the escarpment. Instead, she stayed in her apartment above the art shop, near the abandoned mall downtown. But even she came every day to the old stone church where they held meetings. Every afternoon a meal was prepared, and the remaining people gathered with an air of gentle gravity. They gathered the way the now abandoned satellites that had once choked the atmosphere with signals did in the sky. They gathered the way debris did in the unthinkable sea. Perhaps it was not surprising then that some of them, these orphans of the age, had become collectors, specializing their hoards. Rosa, 29 and unable to leave the group because of her stubborn mother, had begun to accumulate stringed instruments. She took borrowed cars up to the music store on Upper James or down to the one on King, searching through the basements and garages of former teenage guitarists who had lived in wealthy townships. The group had some gasoline left, kept in one of the garage caches near the church, but there was always the worry that the gas gauges of these cars did not read true. So Rosa planned for the possibility that she'd have to walk or find a bicycle to get home, and was careful to remain inside an invisible perimeter. Even so, she had amassed enough cellos, violins, ukuleles, banjos, and guitars to fill 2 rooms of one of the houses where she and her mother were squatting. Sometimes Rosa took Marie with her. Without traffic and without other people, it was easy for them to traverse the city as though they were giants. They took their few large steps from the lake, which buttressed the city's northerly side, and rode under overpasses and over bridges, past the smokestacks that had once fumed sulphurously, and through the half-crumbling sites of a mid-sized city. Parks, parking garages, 100 small shops and homes, restaurants and cafes, all reduced to square footage, to the skeleton of their meaningless parts. The city was greener now, Marie thought, except for those streets atop the hill sacrificed to commerce and its billboards and lots. You could breathe easier now. Okay, now I'm just going to skip to a totally different section later in the book. So, what has happened to the world of the amateurs is that a tech giant, in fact, the most powerful tech company in the whole world, Pina, has created or discovered or somehow introduced the world to portal technology. They release these products called ports, and then people begin to buy them, and then they begin to leave, and soon there's almost no one left. So the next section of the first section of the novel takes place in Marie and Rosa's group in something like a Hamilton, Ontario. And the second section of the novel takes place in Silicon Valley. So this small section is, it's sort of the reported fable of how it was that Albrecht Dürer was able to create what appear to be time travel portals. One night, as the story went, alone in his office in the expanse of buildings that was very much like a compound, Dürer was conducting an invisible orchestra with its touch-free keyboard, and had taken several hits of high-grade ADHD meds when the meaning of his name hit him. Dürer. He was surrounded by prototypes, by a thin arc shaped out of carboskin and biobark that he had a few days earlier in a fit of whimsy combined. At first, the 3-foot-high arch had throbbed a little, as an aroused body does, he thought, responding and rising to touch, and then not much had happened for a while. Dürer sat in his office, Baroque organ music pounding out of speakers, until he noticed, suddenly, that the prototype was communicating with him. He was confronted with an ancient problem. Was it inside my head, that voice I heard, or did it come from without? He dwelt on this even as he considered the command, the urging idea, so lay another screen along it. He sat there with the touch-free screens at his bidding, awaiting input for the commands he'd been building toward all afternoon, and those screens too were throbbing expectantly in their way. So, let's lay another screen along it, he thought, dropping commands in. Dürer had always been the kind of chef to mix first, measure never. Dürer. He was thinking AI. He was thinking biotic AI. He was thinking, here it is, maybe, here it comes, the singularity. The AI is beautiful, and it can speak, and it will be our glory. And then again, he was thinking, Dürer. He went to one of the labs with his not yet fully formed thought, humming, singing, jumping down the stairs 3 at a time. He grabbed mice and rats from experiments, ruining those experiments. Running back to his office, box of rodents under each arm, he pointed at the surveillance cameras blinking at him on their thin necks. We're not scientists. We're inventors, damn it. Science has gotten us nowhere. I'll get us somewhere. Dürer will bail you all out. He said these words aloud, maybe, or maybe he thought them. Thoughts were streaming through his mind now. He had fucking solved the problem of energy use, and he knew that the universe was multiple, even infinitely multiple. So, of course, now the machine had the ability to generate its own power, the converting, adapting power coupled with the quantum knowledge, and all you had to do was make the machine biological. Already it knew how to think. And what was a person but a member of a cognitive system who obeyed algorithms and believed in its own uniqueness? Here it was, the solution to all problems. Mouse 1 scurried around in circles under the arch-shaped prototype for a few minutes. Then, while Doors was watching, it disappeared, vanished, no trace. He touchlessly tapped in commands, searching, and got the same result. Mouse DNA, 0. Mouse DNA, 0. No trace? Speak to me, he said, and heard nothing. Tried another mouse, and a rat, and then, faced with the enormity of his discovery and the certainty about what had happened, he stood up and went to the window. Moonlit greenery spread out endlessly towards the far-off lights of the city. The universe was so vast that the ocean was by comparison a puddle, a droplet, nothing. He looked back at the shimmering skin thing he'd sculpted, a tree in some new and wonderful garden. He nursed his high and turned it over in his mind. Being alone with knowledge no one else had was the best thing there was. He had made a door. Thus concludes the reading. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm so glad to be here with you in this small way. If you're interested in reaching out, I'd love to hear from you. My website is just lizharmer.com. You can also find me on Twitter at lizharmer or on Instagram at harmerliz. I hope that things are well where you are. Thank you so much.